Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Lipstick Leadership Legacy Podcast with JaneTaff the Sage and Deanna Vestal, your career catalyst. This week, we are discussing how we believe moms are uniquely qualified to lead, especially in times of crisis. Listen in as we share our thoughts. I really think women are uniquely qualified to be leaders in times of crisis. How about you?
I do agree with that. I believe that women handle crises since well before the pandemic. And even in the original momming as a profession in societal norm, you get that last minute call for, the boss is coming over for dinner and it's going to happen in 2 hours. And that has always been an expectation. And then fast forward into, let's say, like the 80s or 90s when I was coming up. I had 2 sisters younger than I did, and there would be emergencies where my parents both worked. Mm-hmm. And so my mom would call me with a list of things that had to be done before she got to the house. And then phase 2 would begin, where there would be an entire let's say a corporate rollout of what happens in the evening time at home.
Right.
And then there would be things that come up like arguments among the girls, or where suddenly after a bath you couldn't find tomorrow's clothes or even tonight's pajamas. Mm-hmm. And then you'd have to start the laundry in the middle of the night. But in those days, at least in my upbringing, there was only one television, and you can't be making noise while the parents are watching TV. I mean,
Yeah.
So then you really fast forward into today, and I thought that your idea for a podcast topic was extremely poignant. Mm-hmm. Because especially it coincided with the reading so much, not just from Harvard Business Review, but from many other articles, and come to find out, it's a topic of discussion.
Yeah.
And it made me reflect not only on so many colorful stories from other families and corporations and the blend of that was forced to happen during COVID, but it made me think of my own situation and being the mother of an adult and being an entrepreneur in a time like this, and a civic leader. Mm-hmm. The transitions were so many and so harried, and suddenly I really didn't see a lot of men in the way they just seemed to transition easier. Mm-hmm. So I can't wait to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, by our very nature, moms are multitasking, resourceful, able to adjust to all the different personalities around them, whether they be, peers or those that you're managing, your little people, or the people who work for you. And that is a constant adjustment that we're pre-wired to work through, right? So if we are pre-wired as human beings of this form, right, to manage all kinds of things, at least in the household, of course we would have high transferable skills in the professional workplace. And I really like how these articles that you and I have been reading, collecting, looking at, just catching our attention, has talked about moms specifically, not just women, because women who do not have children are a totally breed of behaviors, right? And it's not good or bad. It's just multitasking is not something that they are called to do, and it is not one of those skills that they cultivate because of experience, right? I have a very dear aunt, never had children, and so she didn't understand how to manage multiple people. She could barely manage herself. I mean, she had a full-time career and she didn't have children, and it was enough for her to get out of the house every day. Right? And I'm thinking, good God, have a child or two and they'll make you super efficient, right? And that happened to most of my friends too, when they went from childless to children. First, there was this period of chaos and then rhythm, right? Because women are really good at learning a rhythm. And I think that's why in crisis, you literally gear up or shift from one rhythm to another rhythm. But the other thing that really made me think about this was, it's been reported over and over again during COVID, and the COVID response, work from home needs, the woman in the household really was called upon to further multitask. She might have been doing adult caregiving for a parent or older sibling. She might still have children in the home, so it's child care and elder care. And that those worlds were all separate before. And then she was called upon to do it all at the same time, all in the same space. Now what? Right? And that became a disproportionate effect on women. Even though we react in crisis much more holistically, we're much more compassionate, we're empathetic over the situations, we were actually impacted as well. So, depending on your age and responsibilities, it might have all crashed into one location and time space, and that was very difficult. And so,
You mean as a child or as a mom?
as a mom, yeah,
Yes.
because we are at an age, right, Deanna, where we are the sandwich generation. We have older, relatives, parents, siblings, in your case, that are older than us, and we still might have children, like I have children who still live at home, still in school, and we're still actively managing them. And so we're now in the middle.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight was had one thing to do with the intergenerational and intercultural
Yeah.
scenario that you have. Are you open to talking about
Sure.
who you
I'm
are
always
in the
open.
sandwich? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a mom who has a mom
Mhm.
and you're married.
Mhm.
Do you believe that for where we are in society and in your age group,
Mhm.
that culture plays a part? And if so, what? Or even if not, why?
I honestly, that's so hard for me because culturally, I'm supposed to be really close in distance to my mother, and I'm an only child. But I'm actually relatively far in distance from my mom, 100 miles, right? And I don't live 2 blocks away from her, like most children would kind of stick around in the Asian culture close to their parents. But in this, we ended up living very, very separately, because she's so far. And then she had crisis. She needed me. So of course, being an only child, I drop everything and show up. But that was very difficult for both her and I because, she felt the COVID restrictions really had to be adhered to. And I was like, no, Mom, it's just us. And we had a conflict of belief about how to deal with potential, cross contamination, things like that. And then she just needed me, and all of those ideas went out the window because she simply needed me. So I think
That's huge.
yeah, and more than culture, it's really responsibility. And what role did you play in your family, right? Like you have many siblings, I have none. And so when my mom calls upon me, it is me and it has to be done by me. There is no, hey, can I call a closer sibling to her to help me out in that moment, even when I can't. I had to cancel things professionally, and that became difficult, but I knew I could and I would. Right. So I would overcome that regardless of how difficult it was for me.
You talk about a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So one thing you're saying is that it's not normal as it is.
Right.
So how did you transition to the new normal, and how would culture play a part? Well, first of all,
Yeah.
you're an only child. And with that, in the traditional Asian culture, even today, that comes with an extreme level of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I know about your relationship with mom, that was adhered to in your upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And as you continue to create an adult relationship with her, you also prioritize your relationship with your husband and the family.
Yeah.
So if that meant that you didn't live in California, or if that meant that you didn't live in the same city as she did, even upon returning to California, that you still did your part
Mm-hmm.
in keeping the relationship healthy.
Yeah. And this is for all of us though. It doesn't matter that I'm, in an Asian culture. It's really about what are your family norms, but more basic to the mom experience, let's call it that, is you have to juggle all the facets of you when one rises to the top as far as need, right? Let's say the tables were turned and my business was requiring me to be away from family, right? And now I have to choose. I have to choose my business project. I have to rearrange my family situation in order to make this a priority in the moment. Not that it is the ultimate priority, but I have to choose in the moment what I can and cannot do, right? And this is moms worldwide, because we are in both the professional workplace or business owners and moms actively navigating our family situations, whether we're caregivers of young people or older people. That's all a negotiation constantly.
Constantly.
Yeah.
I love how you are making sure to include all the moms, because then it does transcend. We are different, but we're not a melting pot. We're more like a salad bowl.
Yeah.
We complement each other when we choose to, culturally.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that is true. And then there is a broader culture, a more consistent culture today than ever, of moms in leadership, mom as the leader.
Yeah.
And that is such an interesting and, in my belief system, true case to make about what's happening now. And yet, it's not everyone's perception. Are you finding more now than ever that you are meeting other women who feel that way? Or do you think, and what about within your family? Is your family still very traditionally Asian, and does that subject come up?
Yeah, well, my broader family, my family of origin, all Asian, but the family I've created is multiracial. So, we have kind of a meeting in the middle. Sometimes we're all very Asian and sometimes we're very Americanized. And so for us, it's, again, what have we agreed to? And I'm married, I'm not a single mom. When I was a single mom, those are pressures that I don't ever want to revisit personally. And, but I understand them, where everything is on you, right?
Yes.
So for me, I don't want to revisit that state of being, because I'm an only child. There's other pressures that come along with that. And now I don't have a support system with my children. So,
Yes.
That would be very, very difficult. So, often when we talk moms, we always talk about, working moms, single moms. I'd like to, for this discussion, not get too bogged down in the different types of moms, because that's not our objective, right? It's not our objective to divide. It's to say, how is our struggle, story, or experience very common amongst all of us, right? And of course, some of us have more pressure in one area versus another, right? Because a mom occupying a C-suite position, a founder and owner of a fairly large small company, will have pressures that are different from, someone who is a manager who works more 9 to 5 and has a partner and all these things. And so, let's not seek to divide, but seek to harmonize. And pick out those common experiences, because there's enough of them. There's enough of them, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is how it really works. That is when exceptional things and maybe even things that seem miraculous happen. Is when we do acknowledge what's different and how we are individuals
Yeah.
and find common ground.
Right.
And
Yeah.
one of the articles that we read was how women are differently equipped.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some dynamic, you just mentioned some very dynamic ways that women are equipped, and how some women may have different family or business situations.
Mm-hmm.
But what did that article speak to you about?
Yeah, the article had many aspects of why women are specifically equipped to be leaders, great leaders in crisis. But the two that stick out for me are the ability to listen, truly listen, right? And to be empathetic, meaning our favorite, me too. I understand because me too. I'm going through that also. So I have the sympathy and empathy to hear you when you say I'm feeling stretched, I'm feeling, overwhelmed, things like that, because when you're in management, right now you're managing everyone from a distance. You can't run into their office and they can't run into yours. So whatever you're experiencing toward your staff, they're experiencing toward you if you're still working at a distance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those are my
Absolutely.
two. How about yours?
Well, those are my two also.
I
And
know.
I keep being so fascinated by how women who are parents, I mean, you said something, the hand that rocks the cradle rocks the world.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And yet, once again, COVID or the pandemic or these current economic and political pressure times have shaken us up even more and caused divisiveness, where really a call to action for inclusion is required. So there's this constant dichotomy, because I'm raised as in a Jewish family with a Black dad,
Mm-hmm.
and two households living next door to each other. So yes, that means that my father was married twice and raised his children together.
Mm-hmm.
That's already like a story movie book in its own, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, taught to succeed and behave in traditional norms.
Mm-hmm.
So a time like today, where people are really being forced to look at people, men and women, are being forced to look at ourselves in the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
and identify who we are. So there's even more opportunity to bond and bond and bond. And through the sheathing of people who are separating and people who are so frustrated, they just can't keep relationships going. I'm seeing this incredible tribe, if you will, this crew, a team of women who are moms and leaders, talking more and more about how their mom was their first leader, their first example of real leadership, and their example of strength and mental health. And that's what I'm really what's really resonating with me in a time like this, and for this episode.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And let's really talk about mental health. I think the reason why women are both at the same time, and this is hard to understand but easy to know because you and I are both women, they are experiencing mental health crisis and being the rock that people lean on, which is a hard place to be, and it's a delicate balance for the woman in that place, because she is managing her own emotions while at the same time having to help others manage all of those emotions for them as well. Just because she can doesn't mean it's always easy, right? And who does she go to? So as we continue this part of the conversation, mental health for women is really important. And our last conversation was about adult girlfriends. And I always like to ask our listeners, who is your support team? Who are your adult girlfriends, your people, your rocks, your cheerleaders, who you can speak the truth to, get some relief in the truth, right? Because we can't always speak the truth to some people in our lives, and get that emotional safe place. Because we're juggling a lot of emotional information. Let's just call it that. Because it's not always bad, it's not always good, but it's a lot of bits and pieces, right?
Yes. And when you talk about emotions and mental health in this current environment, beliefs and faith have been a common theme for me.
Okay.
And I have been embraced in prayer. And what I have found especially heartening is that women who are moms in this time, more so than men, more so than women who are not, are so, what's the opposite of intimidated? Are so upfront about offering prayer. And without even saying, before in corporate America, I've been in situations, especially in healthcare, where prayer was offered, and there would always be a disclaimer. I'm not sure what your beliefs are, but if you'd like, I'd love to offer you or invite you to a moment of prayer. I'm happy to lead, this kind of scenario, right? But nowadays, I've just heard people praising God or giving thanks to Allah, or saying that in their morning ablutions or meditation. And, I have been heartened. I have really felt embraced by that. And I think that is important to note, although I did not find any readings to really back that up. But in my personal experience throughout the last year and change now, I think that with mental health is something that women balance. There are also moms are natural leaders, and in business leadership today, an emotional or spiritual practice is really elevating into our main space. Have you, could you talk, I can't say have you, because I know a little bit about, I follow you on Facebook, reading the Bible every morning. And so I'd really like to introduce your take on the place that belief has for moms in leadership and moms as leaders.
I really believe, and I think while, both of us have anecdotal experiences, stories, or examples, I think it is very true. In times of crisis, only faith can stand. So whatever you put your faith in, that will be what stands when you have crisis. If you put your faith, for me, since I put my faith in God, supreme being of the universe, however you want to reference God, he will stand higher than my issues, my problems, right? Bigger than all of my problems. Hope is bigger than problems, fear, trouble, things like that. And for most people, if you do not have that, fear, trouble, crisis will crush you. It crushes your spirit, because that's what it does. The human condition is not meant to withstand crisis without faith or support. And this is why I say people around you, because I will say, and this is, I believe, consistent, when my faith is weak, I have other people around me to believe for me. Right? And this is why it's so important to have supporters around you, to, pump up the hope around you, to surround you with their hopeful bubble, to let you cry on their shoulder, to be that person where you can get the emotional part out, so your heart can be open to receive whatever hope might be available to you. Right? I really believe crying is cleansing, so I reference crying a lot. And because sometimes when words fail, tears do the job, right? Right? Think about how a mother comforts a child. Sometimes, most of the time, a child cannot find the right words to express the emotion felt. And so, you crawl up into your mom or your favorite auntie's lap and you just cry it out. Right? And that says everything, right? And their warmth and protection of you in that moment is all you needed to move on, right?
Yes. You mentioned too about how you and your mom did not have the same belief system about how to be protected
Uh-huh.
during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when your words are, there's science that talks about how our words shape reality and how tears are cleansing,
Mm-hmm.
and how as humans, we are social beings. We need the warmth and the touch, and we crave this. So for women or people who did not have one, two, three, all the things that we've been mentioning thus far about support and mental health and our emotions and our belief system, what's your take on the mental health journey or in seeking assistance through telehealth for assistance? And what kind of assistance would you then refer to?
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about this before and talking about sometimes when you have lack as a child growing up, I know it's very true for me. You have a lot of masking that you don't realize you're doing. Masking meaning you're trying on different controls so that people don't see the real you. And I had a lot of them, and my favorite mask was tough girl, I don't need anybody, right? Strong woman mask for the rest of us who have, that particular understanding. I'm a strong woman. I don't need you. I didn't need her. And I'm just going to keep moving on. But that is a smokescreen for all the hurt and sensitivity that you've built up because of I like to call a love gap, right? When you're not all the way loved up as a kid, I'll just call it that because there are other terms that could be used. When you're not all the way loved up as a kid, you have a lot of insecurities, and I did. You have insecurities about, am I good enough? Am I loved? Am I smart enough? Am I worth anybody else's time? What's my value? I have no idea because no one ever has expressed that I have value ever. Right? It was just all tough and expectation. So you grow up with a misunderstanding of what it means to be strong. And so for me, it was hard. The reason why I talk about crying a lot is because it was not okay for me to cry when I was a kid. That was a sign of weakness, not a sign of an overflow of, it got to be too much, so it needs to come out. And any emotion was not acceptable. Like too much happiness. You can't be too giddy up in here, and you can't be sad. You can't be depressed. And so I became all of that, and I was confused and hard pressed to figure out what to do. As an adult, it took a few very centered, whole, older women to step into the mom role, and we can talk about that in later episodes because that's a whole conversation, to become my emotional replacement moms who loved me unconditionally, told me I was doing a great job. And these are women I met in the professional environment. So what I'm saying here is, strong women, this is especially for you. Be open to those kind, amazing women who you might at first judge as, why are you so fluffy and soft? And no, I don't want to hug you. And I kind of love you, but let me do it from a distance. And she keeps coming at me. Let her in. Let her in because you actually need her. I know I did.
And there's someone right now who has been treating you that way, and you may have overlooked it or you may have been pushing it off. Here's your invitation.
Yes.
Heed this call.
Yeah. And because, I have surprised myself with sudden displays of emotion with someone who treats me in a loving, gentle way because it was so foreign to me. So foreign to me that I would have sudden, unexpected outbursts. And I didn't know why they came, and it took me a long time to figure out why. But it's amazing. As tough as you believe you are, I want you to possibly consider that may have been a layer of protection you've put on to get through hard parts. And that is not to be, just like armor is not to be worn outside of war, you don't need to have that armor on all the time. There are so many amazing people who are not trying to, shoot you with fiery darts of hate all the time or disappointment, whatever you grew up with. Because those were my fears. If I opened my heart to other people I might get hurt. Just like with people who I thought were supposed to care for me, that was their job. Um, it's really difficult when you get into something like that, and you have an opportunity to heal as an adult. For women, because we become caregivers, this is why it's so important for me to heal, me myself, because when I became a mom, I thought of all the things I wanted that I didn't quite get in my childhood. Now, am I still angry at my mother? No. We've gone through amazing transformation, restoration, reconciliation in our lives, and we're amazingly close right now.
Thank goodness. What an honor and a
Yeah,
treasure.
which is a privilege, right? We've both
And a
lived long enough to have peace. And that is available to all of us. You don't need to hang on, just like they say, hate is a poison you take hoping the other person will die.
Well, talk about how it is possible, because yes, and yet it becomes very tasty for many of us simply because we're used to it. So is
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, no offense to Coca-Cola, but
Right.
soda water and things of that nature are also very dangerous. And
Yeah.
yet we consume them as a treat every day.
Yeah.
And so when you say that there may be a layer of protection because what we think is not possible is easier to accept,
Yeah.
how then do you propose healing with your mom is possible as an adult? And what a treasure it is to behold.
Yeah. And our podcast has legacy in it, right? Lipstick, leadership, and legacy. Legacy should be very, very important for women. I know for us, we think about it because we're on the other side of the other half of our lives, right? We're just barely crossing over, girl. We're not that much into it. But because we have children. And I think this is the thing that should shift every woman's mindset. Once you have children, your thought always is, how is their world going to be a better place than my world was? I get to frame that world, right? With how to make things whole, because what really came to my realization with the assistance of my husband was they're not growing up in a situation I grew up in. So let's not create behaviors to respond to situations that are not apparent, right? Are not in their lives. So,
A good point.
yeah. So, you have to choose. How do you want them to be loved? How do you want to have those conversations with your children? And more importantly, here's the kicker for me. How do I want them to navigate their world that is not in response to fear, but all the confidence and all the equipping I could give them, right? To show up better than me, because isn't that what we all want for our kids, to show up better than ourselves? And so that means instruction. If you want your kids to love themselves, then you need to show them how that looks. And guess what? I said show, not tell. And if I can't show them I love me by taking care of me, by taking breaks, by vocalizing when I need a break, when I'm having a mental break, when I'm having to need mental recharge. Let me give you a quick example. This weekend I went and I had a training program out of town, right? Now, that training program was midday Saturday. I could have gone down there, did my training, come back all in one day. But I told my family I'm going to be gone from Friday evening, Friday late afternoon to Sunday afternoon because I need some personal recharge time. And so they understood, and that doesn't mean I don't love them. That doesn't mean I don't care to be around them. That has nothing to do with anything because my communication was very clear. I just need to recharge. I've been doing, intense work for the last few weeks. I need some alone time, right? But I communicated those things. Now my children, I hope, by example and verbalization, have the tools to also say the same if they needed that from me.
By example.
Yeah. And in fact, my daughter, because I'm really, really pretty good about saying, hey, I need a little alone time. I'm going to go over here for a few hours. I'll come back in a little bit this evening. She's an introvert. And when she needs alone time, she says, you know what? I'm just going to spend some time alone. I'm going to close my door, or I'm going to go on a bike ride to the park by myself. I'll take my cell phone. I'll be safe, but I need some alone time. And we respectfully agree, take that alone time, right? So, examples are so important, especially if you've had a traumatic or crisis-driven childhood, right? Because now what are you going to consciously instill in your kids? Not unconsciously, not accidentally, but consciously and on purpose. And that's so important that we live purposefully so that our kids learn things that we meant to teach them, not oops.
Yes.
You caught that. Oh no. Years of therapy later,
Therapy. Ooh, let's add that one in there too. But you're talking about the difference between intention versus purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm also hearing you in the same exclamation, integrate.
Yeah.
The two.
Yeah.
And that really does help define a lot of the reading that we've been doing and a lot of the discussions. And I'm a big LinkedIn fanatic, as you know. Yeah. And so I did some research in preparation for this evening's talk, or this session's talk, on LinkedIn, and found these layers. That's the thing. Women are layered.
Yes.
And that helps in transitioning quickly under pressure, under fire, when it is required and when it is most efficient, and right now we're having all of that at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you've been talking, and we have been expounding on the value of true communication as women, as moms, as daughters, in all areas, caretaking.
Mm-hmm.
And by commitment, leading by example, through reading, through sharing, through embracing opportunities to be embraced.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned therapy. Ding, ding, ding. Even with all of those, that additional layer of seeking assistance in ways that we just don't have access to in our current resource pool.
Yeah.
And counseling, mentorship. What role do you find in the layers that therapy can play in taking care of yourself and leading by example, like you said, showing and telling and showing and listening?
Yeah. Therapy is instrumental. I think when you don't know where to go, a therapist can be an amazing ally because you don't know what you don't know, but you don't feel good about it. right? I think therapy is essential when you just can't put your finger on what is going on with me, right? And you just cannot figure it out. Working with a therapist, because therapists are trained to ask questions, they're trained to ask questions in a succession of ways in order for you to break open what is actually affecting you, right? And help you see the unseen, right? And for me, going to a therapist first, because I went to therapy several times over my life, both as a child before 18 and several times as an adult. And every time it was because I had blind spots, but I didn't feel good. There was something about that stage that created a need to have a real professional guide me through myself, right? Now, mentors are where you are at a certain level of achievement and want to achieve the next thing, and that individual has already achieved it. They're showing you the steps that they took, and they're sharing that experience. And a coach really is an individual who comes alongside you to help you reflect on the experience that you're having and to expand your thoughts on those known experiences that you're having in order to enhance the experience or shift it if your experience is not in the direction you want to go. So those are the three different ways that those roles can really be integrated in your life for different purposes at different times.
Absolutely. And what do you think about having all three? I mean, simultaneously, intermittently,
Yeah.
woven.
Yeah.
I have found my life and thought process, and of course, my leadership experience kind of got obliterated through those things. And I'll tell you why. Because suddenly I feel much more like a servant than a leader. I almost no longer see the line between one or the other, because the more I learn, I know nothing or very little.
Yeah.
This life experience really is so much more about the experience itself than it is about what happened back there, or fears or concerns about what could happen if this or that does or doesn't happen. And for many of us as women, part of the reason we are strong and part of the reason we do anticipate and pivot is really based on fear of the unknown or trauma responses from the past. And I didn't even know either one of those two things were happening. But I also at some point did not feel good and wanted to. So to have an elder, someone who I also trust and respect, which in this case was my sister, share with me totally in private that she had a coach, a mentor, and a therapist, was enlightening and also encouraging, and gave me the spark that I needed. Not that for some of us, we can have an aha moment, start to seek or do consultations with different practitioners. And from the very first phone call, it's amazing, it fits, it was serendipity. And that also happens for women quite frequently, right? We are in the right place at the right time, and voila.
Yeah.
Also, that is certainly to be expected, but not the norm. Very rarely the norm. And so there is some digging and research and continued conversations that need to happen in some cases. And it just reminds me that along with some calls to action, very sweet, gentle calls to action I've heard you make tonight, that when our listeners are ready to seek guidance and professional assistance, which is in our right, and especially if you work really, really hard and you have the disposable income now because you're not driving or because you're not taking lunches for schools and stuff like that, make the time, make the calls, have your questions answered in a way that helps you feel relief, at least initially. So when you are looking for, whether it be an older Umi type, is what we would call Umi or
Yeah.
Auntie, which I consider myself both an Auntie and an Umi today. I've made it, I've arrived. But when you have an older woman, I also have aunties and umis who are not related to me, who pour into my life now because I've allowed it.
Yeah.
They were there, but now I am embracing those wise words. And we can seek them, even if we cannot easily find that experience, by asking some questions from our heart. The same can be said for therapists, counselors, and mentors. And if you have a question about that, question about your questions, we can help. Feel free to reach out to us through the chat, through any of our social media platforms. We have business platforms as well as our there. And I am speaking for both of us, but that is only one way that you can be mentored, if you will, or guided into which move you might be ready to make if you're still unsure. And we are also offering a mastermind type engagement, an association of sorts, a guided, facilitated conversation, and a series of conversations coming up. And can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into that, though, let's talk about why a lot of women do not seek therapy or coaching or mentorship, right? Let's take the heavy one, therapy. Look, you do not need to experience a mental breakdown or be on the verge of one to look for a therapist. That is, historically kind of the sticky part of you think you're weak and that's why you need a therapist. This is absolutely not true. And there are therapists and then there are psychotherapists. Psychotherapists can administer drugs, hospitalize you, and things like that. We are talking about talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. And so rarely do you need the psychotherapy. Rarely. It does happen. And don't mistake your condition. If you get in with a therapist and you do have a condition that must be treated with medication, that therapist is schooled enough to know to refer you to some other professional. And so we do not take lightly our suggestion that you enter into therapy because it is part of your self-care. Now, as I mentioned, not everybody needs that higher level of therapy. It is really to have and establish a place where you can speak the truth, unburden your emotions without filter or hesitation to another human being whose whole job is to listen so that you can hear you. Right? I mean, that's what we do as coaches, right, Deanna? You know, as we talk, we as human beings, as we talk, sometimes we don't understand and hear ourselves. We need someone to reflect back to us what they are picking up from all that. And sometimes we're just deaf to our own needs. It's just true. And so
just true.
Yeah. I mean, we just don't know what we don't know about ourselves until we work that out with someone who can do that reflective listening. And that's why it's essential for women who are highly relational creatures. That's the other thing. We're wired for communication. And when you get used to too much holding everything in, you lose the ability to hear yourself simply because you're not speaking the words unfiltered in an honest way outside of yourself. And so, it has become instrumental for me to unburden even the deeper things through my therapist. And then later, as I tried to work out other ideas, and they were still deep, but I wasn't deeply affected by it anymore. I was just still trying to work out the finer points with a coach. It really got good for me. And so, I just want to tell you, there is nothing wrong with seeing any of these individuals in different times of your choosing. I just hope that you have someone who you can unburden, right? Yeah,
Beautiful. I'm so glad that you circled back, or, reeled it back to really
yeah,
dive into that.
yeah,
One reason is to, again, unpack the differences of those different levels. And because the coach has a coach,
yeah,
and the therapist has a therapist,
yes,
and the mentor has or had a mentor.
yeah,
And we continue to engage and strengthen who we are as leaders when we are led.
yeah,
And we also, the same is true for service. When we do lead in service, then we are also gaining such a treasure. And there's no way to
yeah,
really pinpoint how that experience is fulfilling except to experience it yourself.
yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Jane. Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. And so, now that that's said, what we put together in a mastermind is kind of not kind of, but a peer group of individual women who are leaders in their own right. And we are now coming to the table to share our experience based on guided topics. And so we will talk about communication, leadership aspects, our favorite topic, emotional intelligence, mindset. And so all these hot topics we will talk about around the table, and give you an opportunity to both share your experience and ask for support, or ask for what are some other experiences, or asking lightly for mentorship, because mentorship comes when experiences are shared. And so we're doing that in the months of August, September, October. And we are really, really looking forward to that with a group of like-minded women.
Yes. And what would we like our listeners to do with that information?
With everything we've talked about today, rest assured, women, it is so very true. And you said it earlier, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Why? Because we have so much influence. We are natural leaders of the family because we birth our followers. And, we naturally are chosen as leaders because we know how to listen, empathize, and lead others through our influence. But I want you to really pay attention to what do I need? What kind of self-care do I need to engage in? And I'm not talking about the hair, nails, and massage, because those things are temporary and go away so very quickly. How about that mental polishing that everybody really needs, but don't know they need until they get it? So would you consider some of that for your self-care regimen? And, we're happy to offer some of that to you, but you also have to choose it. And so my big challenge to the group is, what is it that you are going to choose to engage in for your deeper self-care?
Wow. And by layering mindfulness and emotional intelligence and leadership and conversation for best practices, and integrating activities that help broaden the conversation, deepen the conversation, what are some of the outcomes? I know for me, an immediate boost of confidence. And for someone who did not know I needed confidence, I was amazed at how many areas I just felt more self-assured about through these repeated experiences. And not only that, but a deeper personal relationship with spirit, if you will. There is an energy inside of me that's become my friend.
Mhm.
And before, that same person, if you will, this voice was more like, you know, I'm not going to say the naysayer, kind of,
Yeah.
but, you know, the person that kept me safe, the one that brought the voice that brought up the possibilities for lack or pain or da 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 da. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
And instead, through these kind of engagements and interactions, I have learned or I've become a voice that communes.
Mhm.
I'm one
Right. It's
voice in
become
there.
supportive.
And
Yeah.
I have become my biggest fan and supporter
Yeah.
in a way that is so genuine
Yeah.
that I know it's bigger than me.
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many benefits to, this level of self-care. You talked about confidence, and many mistake confidence. There's two types of confidence. There's fragile confidence and true confidence. Fragile confidence is a confidence you feel you need to defend. Real confidence doesn't need defense. Someone could come at you, and because you know yourself and you're confident in who you are and are well within yourself, you let it go. It slides right off of you, and you feel you don't need to defend it. And so true confidence, a bedrock feeling of confidence. The other thing you mentioned was your self-talk changes from that, you can't, to you've got this, right? Or I fear, to I'm okay. I'm just fine. Your self-talk really changes, and your ability to have room for other people really expands. Because when we're in chaos and in crisis, the only thing we can deal with is ourselves. And so if you are in personal chaos or crisis, think about the other people who actually need you. Let's start with children. When you're in chaos or crisis, can you come out of that to help them? Not very easily. If an extended family member needs you, can you give to them without feeling future resentment or exhaustion or fatigue even? When you have good self-care, it is not a huge stretch to expand to give them the care they now need, right? To shift your attention to the new person who needs something from you. And finally, let's talk about your own inner well-being, your own settledness of yourself. There's something to that elimination of chaos and crisis that lets you sleep well at night. How many of you are not sleeping well at night, right? Not because of out here, but because of in here.
I've been
Because you
hearing
don't
that
have,
so much
yeah,
too by my clients as well.
yeah. The first thing is I'm not sleeping well at night, or now I have to have a glass of wine or a bottle. Are you having dependencies on other things to get you to that quote unquote rest, which is
Rest.
not restful? Because now
True
you wake up
rest.
with a headache, or you're guilty, or any form of negativity, right? We want to do things that encourage our well-being, not negativity or guilt, right? God help us if we're bringing shame to our own selves, right? Because there's enough shame giving that we're going to receive from other parts. We don't need to have it internally. And so, that real inner flow of peace is one of those huge benefits that, let me tell you, nobody's going to disturb my peace now that I have it.
Yes.
Now that I know how to get it, how to establish it, how to lend it temporarily to someone who needs it, there is no way someone's going to take away my peace. And I choose that every day.
And I think you bring up such a good point by mentioning some of the specifics. And sometimes there is this perception that by joining a group of women in a mastermind or a self-led self-discovery group will be a place to share all of these dirty, dark secrets and learn to heal. When the reality is, there is a natural byproduct of shameful things, personal shame, slipping away when you engage in the kind of activities that elevate your emotional intelligence, that elevate your ability to process, for stillness, and etc. So please be encouraged that we are not asking you, we're actually really not asking you to come ready to share your underbelly, okay?
Yeah, your deep dark. No.
But we are offering the chance to get creative in a facilitated way, to also be in a safe place to let loose, okay? And then to rebuild in a private group setting.
Right. Yeah, so important. You know, that's so important. And I love that more women are doing these kinds of things. I love that more women like you and I are establishing these safe spaces for women in their different stages of life. We happen to resonate with women who are just boss babes, you know, and just getting after it. And we have specific needs. You know, because we're getting after things, we don't have that group shrinks, right? Because we can't let loose to anybody.
Yes.
And we understand that. We understand that need for safety. And so, you know, come be heard, get your hashtag Me Too moment. And we're looking forward to helping women transition to the hashtag Me Now.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes,
that is
well
our
said.
objective. You know, if we're going to tie a nice, pretty bow on it, that's our objective. At the end of our mastermind session, we hope for you to truly feel that I started here and now I'm here. And that there is no better feeling than that, but it won't be a beginning and an end. It's a road and a journey that we invite you to take and be on. So we're really looking forward to that in starting August, and we'll make more announcements about that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. What a treasure.
Yeah,
it's been a dynamic discussion.
Absolutely. You know, and I love it because we really resonate with this topic. We are moms experiencing, you know, the pandemic just like everyone else. So this is our Me Too.
That's right.
We get to work through the difficulties, you know, even our own overwhelm and our own, you know, feelings about everything with each other. And we're happy to extend that to so many people. You know, really, this is the true outpouring and why we created the L3P community, because we knew if we needed it, we're not unique in any way. We know other women need what we need. So we're happy to be of service to you. We are looking forward to getting more topics like this in the books, and I'm really looking forward to it. So we've had a great conversation today, Deanna.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we are looking forward to talking about this. Chat it up in all of the chats and hit us up on all of our social media platforms. We are looking forward to hearing from you and asking you, what are your experiences? What are your experiences related to what we talk about week after week? Let us know, and we're happy to hear from you. And today we're signing off. This is JaneTaff the Sage.
Deanna Vestal, your career catalyst.
We'll see you next time.